Like, so probably probably a good thing you guys didn't see my reaction to, like, especially towards the end. My God. So sorry my camera wasn't on today. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't too much on the screen because there's a lot we gotta like actually go over. So obviously the whole zoning and GB versus laugh my ass off is pretty much incentivizing that zoning doesn't work in Gremlin versus, and that is false. Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and explain why. Like let's break down every single point that he brought up. Only character to get fireball nerfs. Okay. Either way, the thing is like, no, talk about the fireball nerfs. It's decreasing damage. Let's see. Only characters get fireball nerfs. Decreasing damage, increasing whiff recovery. That's pretty much across the board. Even not just Metera. Gran, Vegeta, Catalina all got issues with their fireballs in some way, shape, or form. All fireballs have been pretty much nerfed for pretty much general across the board, right? Well, that is true. I don't see it as a actual problem in the game in general. Everyone's fireball has been adjusted to the degree. So, okay. And, moving on. Let's see. Better spin cooldown with the anti-air now. No invul DP to anti-air or super. Gotta take the jump in. Alright, so. You jump over fireball, you get hit with a DP. That's kind of been a thing in fighting games since Street Fighter 2. That's not really a new concept or thing, right? Doesn't Metera EX Fireball still knock down? It does still knock down on hit, obviously. Yeah. She doesn't have the worst fireballs. She actually has some pretty good ones compared to everyone else. Considering how, like, Gran and, like, Vegeta and Catalina's don't knock down anymore. I think she's doing pretty good. His issue pretty much is, like, you know, they've slowed down anti-airs in general, right? So, like, you know, like, you normally would jump in to punish a fireball, and usually some people will be like, you know, after throwing a fireball, some characters get, like, a 2H, so that you're forced to use a DP as an answer, rather than, you know, getting a 2H in a full-on combo for whiffing a fireball. Instead of going for the 2H and getting a full combo, they're forcing everyone to use, like, a DP option, which lessens the damage, which has kind of been the thing for, like, this patch overall, minus Belial, of course. They lessen the damage across the board. That's one of the ways of going about that. If people are able to anti-air you with 2H in this game is screen, they get more. While with the DP, you get only that as a reward. They're moving towards more traditional options to deal with jump-ins rather than, like, no, what was given in the previous season. So, instead of just committing to, like, fireball, oh, you jumped 2H into, like, a pickup combo. You now have to, like, get a DP out. They're moving more towards a traditional way of dealing with, like, the fireball game and how people who use fireballs punish instead. Does that essentially nerf the zoning game? Kinda, but, like, that's everyone across the board. The reward you got for getting, like, a 2H for somebody jumping over your fireball was pretty doggone high. Moving on. Mind you, Metera's floating jump forward not changed. They buffed all the normal jumps, normal forward jumps, and nerfed all the fireball recovery. Yeah, this encourages the opponent to use the DP, like I mentioned earlier, to anti-air you, rather than doing like a 2H or something like that. The opponent has to use something less rewarding to stop you from jumping in after a fireball. It forces the opponents to use a more committal option that grants less a reward, but maintains the neutral positioning. Makes perfect sense to me. Metera having a floaty jump. In case you notice, all the zoners have floaty jumps in this game. Like, let's say the two zoners are Metera and Fairy. Both of them have pretty floaty jumps. Imagine the Rushdown Shoulder having a good enough fireball to 2H or crazy. In Grant's case, he'll EXDP and get your face anyway, which is 100% what the character wants. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Freddy. I think we're good here. You can also argue that her normal jump isn't like other jumps in the case 5. You can also maneuver in advance again. Thank you. Another good point. Shout out to Seth Series. I got a bunch of people in here using their noggins, right? Let's see. I want to read. Fireball recovery was increased. Dev reason. Couldn't take advantage of it after rolls. But the recovery is too high and anti-airs are all over 10 frames startup. In fighting games, with rolling as an option, you should be able to roll through a fireball and punish. Pretty similar to other fighting games that does that. For example, King of Fighters. You could totally do that in that game. That's pretty standard. If you're predictable with your fireball pattern, you should be getting punished. It's part of the way of exploiting zoning with games that have a roll option. If you are zoning and you are being predictable and someone rolls through your predictable pattern, you should get punished. That's why you don't throw in a predictable pattern. You space in time and you take consideration what your opponent's options are. If you're in range for your opponent to roll you, that means you're not in range to throw a fucking fireball, which is part of the essential needs to understand how to play a zoner. If they are in range of rolling a fireball, you need to use other options that are less risky or calling out the roll. Like, I don't know, Metera's 2M, even 4M would call out a roll. 2L if they're close enough. So you got options. You're in range 2. You shouldn't be using fireballs as an option to zone in range 2. That's a core thing about fundamentals of zoning. If you're playing a zoner, you need to understand your ranges where you should and should not throw fireballs. If you're within roll range, you aren't going to be able to throw fireballs safely, especially if the opponent's looking for it and trying to get a read on the situation. Because if you throw a fireball at that range and someone rolls it, guess what? Your turn's over. It's now their turn. That's some fundamental shit that comes with fucking zoning as a fighting game player. Moving on. Star Sky, yep. Alright. Full screen's fine. No risk, nothing gained. I agree. I absolutely agree. At this range, this is range 4. For those that may not understand, let's break this down so that you guys understand the terminology here, right? We're going to say, granted, this pace here, right? Metera is over here. This is what we like to call range 4. Range 4 is full screen. When you're at this range here, you're at range 4. When you're about this range here, you're range 3. When you're about this range here, which is usually the round start positioning, you're range 2. And when you're over here, you're range 1. Does everybody understand that? Everybody get where I'm coming from? We good, right? Obviously, throwing fireballs at range 4, obviously as a zoner, range 4 is the safest option. But it's also, like he said, no risk, gains nothing. Throwing fireballs from this range is not really a threat because the fireballs are very reactable. It's just a fireball that can be neutral jumped, rolled forward, or jumped over forward. You can't really get a good anti-air from range 4 either. Range 3 is where you go ahead and set up your anti-air options. Which is why range 4 is kind of just like, well, this is to go ahead and give me time to actually set up. You're not going to try to fight the opponent from this range all the time. When you're at range 4, the only biggest threat behind the fireball is if you have butterfly out. But if you're just shooting fireballs, shooting plasma from that range, one at a time, not really a big threat. So I agree with this. You're absolutely right. Yep. As you get closer, that's range 3. Yep, range 3. This is where the fireball game is actually most effective. Range 3. Range 3 is where the zoner wants to be at anyway. You can set up, you can shoot and it be effective. You can shoot projectiles, they block, you're in a plus situation, they get hit, you get to gain more ground. You can set up butterflies generally in a safe range. And you can also react to anti-airs from this range. It's much easier to deal with the opponents here. And yep, and if they roll, you don't die. Exactly. But the problem I have here is that he's only having the opponent block. As you get closer, yep. 3/4 range where you where you look for jump, you're even. Half range, 2/4 range, you're negative. Pretty weird wording and terminology. So, pretty much, range 3 is where you look for jumps, and you're even. Correct. Range 2, you're negative. Correct. If your opponents are blocking fireballs in those ranges, you're even. Range 2, you're negative. That's just how fireballs have worked forever. It's been that way forever. Even with much older games. Unless, and this is, of course, excluding EX fireballs, by the way. Because EX fireballs are usually plus on block. This shouldn't be really a complaint. This is part of the nature of just understanding zoning. If you are in range 3, that's where your projectile game is strongest. But if you're at range 2, it's a little weaker there, and you're putting yourself at risk to be hit or like, you know, roll through or punish for certain stuff. The rule of thumb is that your fireball is a longer poke, not an actual fireball. Tega, thank you. Good. Someone knows how to fucking use fireballs. I don't have to read the rest of that. Like, yeah, exactly. Your fireballs are pretty much like extended pokes at that point in time. So you're not really looking to, like, you know, force people to block these fireballs. Like, if you're in that range 2, you're looking more to, like, whiff punish. But yeah, that's how fireballs work in fighting games. Range 3, safest place to throw fireballs. Like, that's always been the way it has been. If you're zoning, you're doing it at range 3. Fireballs thrown at range 2 are generally negative on block, unless it's EX, like I mentioned before. Always has been. Which is why you should use your fireball as pokes rather than projectiles, as Tega has said in the stream chat. I'm mad that your sub notifications T Titans go. Bro, that song is fire. Like, you gotta give that up. Back what I was saying. If you're using fireballs at range 2, they're generally used as pokes more than projectiles. You're usually punishing stuff. If you want to use your fireballs at range 2 to be effective, yo, thanks for the follow, Seth Series. At range 2, you're using your fireballs more of like counter poking or like whiff punishing. So you got to take that into consideration rather than zoning in range 2. That's how fireball game works. If you are in range 2, you are now no longer zoning. Or force your opponent to block with an EX fireball to create space so that you can go back to zoning. Retreat to range 3 and strengthen it up. Pretty much playing in range 2 has always been riskier for position for zoners because it's harder to react to in those situations. We were using the projectiles to whiff punish. You know, call people out for those type of things. Like, you know, trying to poke and using and punish them for it. If you don't believe me, perfect example, watch some Street Fighter 4 Sagat from Bonchan. He definitely does that with his Sagat. It's a perfect example of that. He's using the fireball game to zone, counter poke, you know, and whiff punish. Like, that man has just like is a master at using the fireball and a master of zoning and understanding how to use the fireball. You throw fireballs in range 2, you gonna be negative. That's just a fact. And okay. Far H reduce, let's see, hit stop, increase recovery. Alright, that far H change is definitely done to balance things out. It balances things out with, like, no, the pacing of the game. Because they decided to, like, make things a little slower, slow the pace up of the game, make anti-airs a little harder with normals, and, like, be more committal with anti-airs and such like that. And also, I don't know why this man is using 5H at round start position. That's not a choice, really. Being used at range 2, it's roll punishable at range 2. Like we've all mentioned already before. It's far range poke, hence the name far heavy. You want to be at max range of range 2 or in range 3 if you're trying to use that shit. It's kind of not a good example. Like, you shouldn't be using the button at the round start position, as I stated before. There's too many risk factors to come into play with that. Now, a lot of us Meteras will get in the bad habit of, like, using that button in that position, and that's how a lot of us end up getting killed. Gotta change that up. We have to be better at not doing that. That is a bad habit of a lot of Metera players, especially round start options. Your round start options with Metera, if you're going to be offensive, should be more committing towards a 2M or far M or, like, you know, a backdash. Like, if you want to be defensive. Like, you want to, like, back up at round start generally. Or at least get a good read on somebody. If you notice that your opponent's going to be running at you, go ahead and shoot him. If your opponents are that aggressive to just run directly at you at round start or do a special move at round start, sure, hit him with 5H. Hit him with a high shot. Hit him with a low shot. That's you getting a read on your opponent in the round start situation. Metera's the zoner game. We don't really want to be in range 2 because of our kit. If we're at range 2, we're trying to push them out and defend ourselves with punish buttons, you know? Using far H in that position for that situation is not really the greatest of ideas. I think I've broken down a good, solid reason as to why, you know, zoning does work in this game. Alright, I'm just going to pretty much, like, say what it is. I don't understand why he, as one of the higher level Meteras, is complaining about the changes. You know, especially when all the other Meteras here in the States have all sat down and understood what the changes were and now have a grasp of how to, like, deal with it. because of this video, I think I can comfortably say this kid don't know how to zone for shit. And his understanding of what zoning is completely off. I'm just speaking honestly. I don't like it. Excuse me if you sound like the old man in the room, but I've been playing fighting games like competitively for about 12 years now. I played Shotos, I played zoners, I played rushdown characters, I've looked at different avenues, I've done video analysis, I've done a lot. And I've genuinely been trying to help him. Like, I PM'd with him, I've talked with him in voice chat in the Metera Discord, which he's no longer in anymore because he left on his own accord. Because I don't believe in kicking people out Discord groups and stuff like that. If you're going to leave, you're going to leave on your own accord. What bothers me is more the fact that this shit got 58 likes. So let's just see where let's see the retweets, right? No, Sol retweeted himself. Okay. Oh no. Let's see. So here's the thing about hilarious. I told Sol about his reach and that his tweeting bullshit may convince people that it may actually be true. Yeah, I'm not thrilled by this at all. I'm not a fan. It's like this. If you liked or retweeted that, it's either you agree or you are like memeing on it. So I'll just be openly real here. If you don't think zoning works in Grand Blue Versus, you really don't know how the concept of understanding zoning or how it actually works. You really need to sit down and like take a learning lesson.